morning to all of you assembled here. I learned that there are a few people who are aspiring to create markets in education and a few people representing the schools who would perhaps be, I wouldn't say victims, but then nevertheless informed consumers of the fare that's being provided. I come from the National Council of Educational Research and Training, and I work with a group within that organization called the Central Institute of Education Technology. And our major work traditionally has been with video and radio, all programs of school education sector that you see on a channel called Gyan Darshan, on a channel called FM channels called Gyan Vani, and on the Doordarshan network, national network, are produced by our organization. We have also moved into the ICT sector, and perhaps I would have an opportunity to briefly describe to you the kinds of initiatives that we have taken as we go along. The purpose of my presentation would not really be to expand on the possibilities of technology. There are quite a few of my eminent colleagues here who will be describing to you what those individual possibilities are, what specific technologies can do to you in your schools and so on. I would only like to sort of flag a few issues which I believe that the entire community would benefit from if they were aware of and they were asking these questions and become a little more critical about the way ICT gets used in the classrooms. We tend to traditionally not distinguish between education and schooling. And I would strongly appeal that we mark this somewhere as a question that needs a little thought, needs a little attention from all of us. We tend to start believing that what happens in schools are what has been written by the NCERT in its textbooks, and therefore those are the only channels of communication that we need to open out in classrooms. There is a lot more in a child's life which needs to be encouraged, nurtured, brought out and blossomed out than those pieces of wisdom which has been distilled over the years and put into something called a textbook. Science, maths, language, social sciences do not constitute education. They are certainly very integral parts of this, and they are very good vehicles for opening out the child's mind to possibilities of thought, possibilities of relationships that need to be built across with others, and to create that global community. But to tend to believe that my knowledge of the Newton's laws of motion is in some way going to liberate me as a soul and is going to constitute that great society that I am trying to build is trying to sort of, make it very trivialized. And it is in that context that I would appeal to all of you to start looking at the possibilities of ICT. And this applies equally well to all those people who come to us marketing specific products, specific ideas on education. Please do ask yourself, in what ways are ICT trying to limit the possibilities of education, how they are coming in the way actually of education that can possibly happen in the classrooms. The reason why I believe this education ICT link ought to be examined a little more critically is that we started reacting to it rather than right from its inception asking of the computer industry, asking of the ICT industry that this is what we want in education and please make a product which can do this. We picked up, for instance, a personal computer and converted it into a perpetually complicated machine. We started reacting to interfaces that got developed not because education had demanded of that kind of an interface, but because somebody made an office package. Okay? So we all got into this act and said, let us teach our children word processing, let us teach our children PowerPoint presentation. Now, the way we went about reacting to every new piece of technology that came into our classrooms has now finally caught up with us. And so while we were extremely gaga over social networking, we are finding ways and means of stopping children from doing it now. We are trying to find out which Twitter sites I shall block. We are trying to find out which products shall I use which are going to snoop in on the child's activity in the ICT classroom. We are trying to say, please don't bring your mobile phones into the classroom. So when we start doing this, it is not because it was ever an educational purpose that we had defined for ourselves for ICT, but a reaction to a nice, glossy, new, colorful product that became available to us. There is an organization called the BECTA, based out of Britain, and which picks up worldwide research, does a meta-analysis of all the results that have come about, and tries to project what ICT can do in education. These BECTA results are available on the web, and I would suggest all of you kindly look at it. In their 3 iterations, which has lasted till now, they have found no evidence across the world to show that ICT has had an influence on education. Children have certainly become far more text savvy. I had to go to a typing class to learn my ASDF ;LKJ, but children today don't have to. And the company has also, the industry has also caught up with it and said that you don't require that anymore. We will have far more intuitive devices of input into the computing environment, and therefore you don't really need to master the keyboard. But then that in itself doesn't prove that children are smarter. Children have far more access to information than you and I ever had in life. But that in itself doesn't make them smarter. They have less respect for spelling today. Commas have vanished from essays. Full stops, once in a while, they do appear there. And we have created a generation of very anxious children who want results at the click of a button or a click of a mouse. This is detrimental to education. Your child at age 4 can send off an email with a photograph as an attachment, does not prove to you that your child is smart. It only proves that you have managed to give that child an access to a machine, and it also proves that that machine is dumb enough to be mastered by a 4-year-old. It does not prove anything else. Please take it from me. We have spent years on education trying to understand children, trying to understand pedagogy, trying to understand subjects. If we have gone about creating some textbooks, it's not because there was some great market there and that we had to flood the market with textbooks, but because that is one of those vehicles that we perceive which can provide an opportunity for some meaningful thinking happening in our classrooms. And if by all the ICT devices that we can think of, we are going to throttle that creativity in some sense of it, we are going to stop children from thinking, I think we would be doing a disservice to education. So kindly be aware of these issues that I am trying to flag. I would certainly love to get into a debate with you at any point in time on any one of these issues. This would not be the moment where we will start getting into arguments about whether this was right or that was right and so on. So please do take it with a kilogram of salt. Whatever I am saying, you can go ahead and reject it for all I care. The fact is that children should be made smarter, and it is our responsibility as parents, as adults, to nurture a society which is a far more meaningful, safer society for them. Take for example, and I am not criticizing the intro that we had for this program, education is a great weapon. Kindly remove words of this kind from your lexicon. Do you want to give an AK-47 to every child of it? Even if it is virtual, doesn't matter. Let's not create weapons. Let's create safer places for our children to grow in. Let us create societies which are going to be live together with a lot more understanding of each other's. Now, the reason why ICT did not deliver on this, and I believe that there is a scope for it and we need to look at it and we need to find meaningful ICT applications in education, is that the ICT was never made for the educational environment. If at all it was made for all those administrative purposes that we deal with in the classroom. It can certainly document marks, it can certainly process those marks. It can certainly deliver multiple choice question papers. It can certainly make the drudgery that is there in the teacher's life manageable. It can release the teacher from a whole lot of chores which he need not be doing and provide that space where he says, let us start examining why this apple is falling. If we don't provide that kind of a space for the teacher, and if we start intruding with a whole lot of other devices in that, we would not be looking at ICT as a meaningful application within the environment. One of those things that was a fallout of this kind of a mad rush, and it was also because we had to depend upon a market-driven exercise. So when a person goes to a school and says, I want to sell you a device, is also looking at the possibility of how many such devices will I manage to sell and what would be my price range there and so on and so forth. And so we began actually with a classroom where 4 children would be huddled in front of a computer. It never had a mouse at that point in time, and they would spend 45 minutes learning up 5 DOS commands. dir enter would be the thing that your child would come back home and report that it had learnt in the IT class. Slowly, of course, we liberated it with a mouse. We started bringing in interventions of other kind, and then the child started learning paint. And when it migrated a little more, it started doing project work. And what was this project work? It was a PowerPoint presentation of cut and paste. We told children that the net is a free place where you can rob things, where you don't have to have any respect for somebody else's copyright, that you need to simply whack things that are available there and make some colorful blotch on a piece of paper, and then that will constitute a project. Along the way, somewhere along the way, we have sold our souls on this. And I become extremely agitated about these issues, that we are trying to rob children of that little space that we had provided of something called school. School can be a meaningful place only if you allow your child to grow through those years and come out at the end of that entire thing as a very strong person, full of character, full of respect for all the values that are enshrined in the in humankind, in human thought, and then allow everybody else to live as peacefully as one is desiring to live. So please do attend to these issues a little more diligently than we have attended to it till now. There is one direction in which technology has started moving, which in a way is a healthy thing, in a way is not so healthy. The mad rush to create multimedia for every single content piece that exists. We believe that if I can have a 3D globe revolving in front of you, it will start explaining things to children much better. And when we start getting that small doubt that perhaps this in itself is not adequate, we will embellish it with a little sound, or maybe we will try to create a multiple choice question after that. I am referring to the entire range of interactive multimedia that has been created over the years. These have not been well thought out educational interventions. And the reason was simple, that initially I had to create these using something like Visual Basic. Then came along a software called Flash, which made it far more easier to create this content. So whatever Flash allowed, we started doing. So the moment somebody mastered the art of using ActionScript there, the multiple choice questions started figuring in this entire exercise. It was a reaction to a technology. It was a reaction to a possibility that the technology provided. If we are looking at IT as a must-learn thing in schools, then let us stop looking at computer literacy. Let us also perhaps stop looking at computer-assisted learning, but start looking at something called computing. If a child can engage with this machine, if this child can, because the information is available across the net, use it in meaningful ways. And let me quote a few examples of this kind of a thought. Way back in '97, I received an email from a classroom, a group of students. It had a complete list of students who were in grade 4 in some American school. And this email was an appeal. This email was an appeal saying that if at all you received this mail, it is because somebody has forwarded it to you. We are the students of this particular teacher, and we are doing a small project. What is the project? Kindly reply to this mail telling us where you live, which city, which town, which part of the world do you live in, and we will put a pin on a huge map that we have created in our classroom, and we will know that there exists such and such a place. So if I were in some obscure place in India, which even perhaps everybody else here doesn't know of, that American child will get to know that there exists a place like this on earth, and it was a part of a 4th standard geography project. There is currently at least 2 or 3 forums which are working out of a social networking kind of model. One of them is called Migration Watch. What Migration Watch does is, you can report the spotting of a particular bird in your locality. For instance, there are a large number of birds which migrate through Delhi, because most of us are here sitting here in Delhi today. I am using this example. There is a bird called a starling. Rosy pastor is the other common name that is used for it. This mainly resides in central India during this part of the season, and then around April migrates to Germany and the other northern Scandinavian part of the world, spends the winter there, and around January you will see them coming back again. Around April 25th, and it's almost a clockwork precision that they manage, you will see millions of these birds in Delhi. Almost every single peepal tree will be full of them. And you will notice that they will all be accumulating there, aggregating there, and suddenly after a particular date you don't see them at all. Now across central India, if children have started spotting this bird and pin it down there, and across Pakistan, across Afghanistan, across the areas through which they are flying, if children start spotting this on particular dates and reporting it, look at what this data can say. And children are discovering this. The Gulmohar tree is not a native of South India. It's actually a native of somewhere near Kashmir. And therefore, if you start noting the flowering of a Gulmohar tree, you will notice that it flowers at different points in time in different parts of the country, because the weather is moving. The seasons are changing, but not at the same time. It's not summer at the same time throughout the country. In South, it's already summer now. Okay? So you will start noticing these changes there. That to us is meaningful social science education. So if children start doing it, the power of data is communicated to them. The power of getting data from across the world, all of us collaborating together on a project becomes much more meaningful. It's so very easy to do. So it's not, there was a time when pen pals used to be something great. Today, because social networking is available, nobody really bothers, And when you log into your social networking site, you don't even really ask where this other fellow is from. But there can be a far more meaningful environment that can be created around ICT, which will point towards the kinds of things that we are doing. One last point, kindly permit me to present this before you. The K-12 segment again is based on a market definition that you people have carved out for yourself, and I am referring now to those people who are aspiring to create niche segments of content elsewhere in the school system. There is something called a CBSE school. Now the CBSE school is actually a reaction. I'm not saying everybody has done this, but it's a reaction to the oppressive state government regime of what can be done or what can't be done in schools. So when you start setting up a school, you say that I want to be a private school, but I don't like the state government's rules, so therefore I'll affiliate myself with the central government, the Central Board of Secondary Education, thereby liberating yourself a little, creating that little space, extra space for doing whatever it is that you want. Now the CBSE primarily uses the NCERT textbook. In subjects where CBSE had not produced textbooks, the NCERT had not produced textbooks, the CBSE got other private agencies into it. But then those were not the glossiest of textbooks, those were not the best of textbooks, because we had to keep the price point low enough. Even today the NCERT, let's say the 11th standard textbook would be available for something of the order of 75 to 80 rupees. You can't dream of this kind of a textbook in any other private agency. Now that in itself does not create enough of a market for you, because the number of CBSE affiliated schools is of the order of some 20,000, 10 to 20,000 schools across the country. So almost every single company which has got into this segment is trying to vie for a market within this. All the other schools are direct government funded schools, and the total number is more than 70 lakhs as of now. The government doesn't buy from you. So therefore, what you do is you start, cutting into each other's market within that small amount of market that is already available. There is only that many number of ways in which you can repackage science or mathematics or language content. And technology permits even lesser ways in which it can be repackaged. Now, there cannot be 10 different ways in which photosynthesis can be taught. There's only that much content, and there's only that much content that has been discovered about it or can be communicated to a 5th standard, 6th standard, 8th standard student. There cannot be more than that. So therefore, I would suggest a model, a way of looking at things. When we did not have this ICT, we were looking at charts, we were looking at models, we were looking at experiments, we were looking at labs, we were looking at activities which children could do. I started off as a primary school teacher, and one of those activities that I have done in my class with grade 2 children, 6-year-old children, which I even now remember and remember it extremely vividly, is that we made a nest. We announced in the class, I asked those children, what do you think a nest contains? And everybody had some suggestion of what a nest contains, what a nest is made of. So we said, fine, I'll give you a small break, go and collect all this material and bring it back and we will create a nest. So these children created a nest, which was about this size. A full bunch of 40 children in 2nd standard, everybody getting some sticks and, pins and various other things. And it had all kinds of material, whatever material that they had believed. Some of them, of course, belong to a crow's nest, some of them belong to some other nest. But then 6-year-olds, doesn't matter. But it was made into a proper nest. And I had no role to play there. Beautiful nest, a huge nest there. And during the break, we figured out that children were fully involved making this nest. Till then, I had not anticipated the activity of what would come next. And I got into the act and said, tomorrow morning, let me bring some eggs and put it in there. And the creative children got one up on me. During the break, I saw them sitting on it. And this can happen only with 6-year-olds. And this can happen only when you remove the keyboard and the mouse from there. And I got into the act again and got one of my peons who had some small chicks at home and replaced it during the assembly period 4-5 days from then. It took me about 4 periods to quieten those children down. Of course, we never told them, leaked out the story that these eggs did not correspond to these chicks, but they had really believed that they had done that. And they were in grade 2 at that time. Around 2005, they had all become engineers. They had discovered Orkut at that point in time, and I have seen the story there. I have seen 22, 23, 24-year-old children narrating the story and discussing the story as something that had happened in their class, and that, of course, many of them remembered certain portions of it, many of them did not remember it, and that's not the point. The point is the impact that you can cause. So please do look at how the content that we are picking up can be meaningfully transacted, and how ICT can, instead of trying to instruct children, instead of trying to teach a concept. Because when you start off with a point that this is a difficult concept, let me explain to you. What you're doing is you're saying that I am afraid of this concept, I want you also to be afraid of it. So it is mathematics made difficult, science made difficult, and so on. All the sugarcoating that we can do on that content is not going to liberate that content. It has to be born out of engaging with that content. And I'm not making any fundamentally new, discovery statements here. This is something that everybody who calls himself or herself an educationist knows. So please, if you are interested in children, if you are interested in education, there is an enormous market out there, but let them play with those things. This device can become a computing device only when you allow children to actually construct things there. This device will become a computing device only if they start doing all that data analysis and all that word analysis that you're talking of. This device can be a good musical instrument. This device can be a good sports instrument only if we look at it from that perspective. That is also the reason why I'm not a great fan of the current Android interface. Android is only a reaction, a free reaction to an iPad. Okay? Both these devices are interfaces which can function as extremely efficient delivery devices. It is only a glorified phone. Remove the SIM, it is not even that. So when we start looking at an app, when we start looking at what children are going to do through this channel and what is it that is going to be transmitted across both ways in this, education has to define that and not technology. Let us as educationists try getting a little deeper, a little harder into this whole thing and searching questions on how is this going to make my life as a teacher more meaningful? How is this going to make my child's life more meaningful as a student? What is it that the student can now learn which could not have been possible earlier? So please treat this as an appeal on the part of all the children of this country, all the teachers of the country who I represent. I believe that there is a lot more meaningful things that can be done with ICT, and we will hopefully have a far more meaningful device in the near future.